Tom Beer, director of The Year Earth Changed. This film shows how nature and wildlife thrived while we were all in lockdown last year. How early into quarantine did this project come about?
Really early on. We knew that things had to start happening pretty fast. I think research began in April. People were looking at the stories that were coming in, and discussions started happening between Apple and BBC Studios then. I'm sure lots of people saw different things coming up on social media of nature responding in certain ways, wildlife responding, and very quickly we were looking into, what's behind these stories, and where's this going to go to. So that all happened within weeks, and then very quickly we were filming, which was, Apple responded very quickly. They wanted something on this, which was great. But the whole timetable that we were working to was really compressed. We were straight from research to filming and carrying on the research throughout, and then starting the edit as early as we could while carrying on filming. So yeah, it was an exciting project on a timescale point of view.
Well, what went into the whole project, like all the logistics of planning and research and like choosing which animals to showcase, and then also filming during a pandemic?
Yeah, there were a lot of challenges. I mean, we wanted to spread the net as wide as we could. So to think about wildlife in the broadest possible sense, to think about the natural world, we looked at stories on across all the continents, and from the smallest animals to the biggest, and so we were looking as wide as we could. We even looked at changes under the Earth's crust, with changes in seismic activity during the lockdown period. So we wanted to be as broad as we could, but at the same time we had to be able to film it, obviously. And normally with the natural history production, there would be crews traveling around, and director, I would be, traveling to different parts of the world. None of that was possible. So we relied on fantastic local crews to do the filming, and we were able to pair up stories with a network of camera operators around the world. The BBC Natural History Unit has got this amazing network of camera operators and fixers and people across the entire globe. So really, we were in this position to be able to pull on all of that really quickly, and to kick off filming, simultaneously in different parts of the globe as soon as we could. It did mean that I was on a lot of video calls trying to coordinate all of that from back home here, and that was challenging, working across multiple time zones and trying to direct remotely. But yeah, we didn't take a single international flight for this. For this production, so I think that's possibly a first in this kind of global natural history filmmaking, and it shows it's possible. It can be done.
I don't think you would ever think that, because you are globetrotting all into so many different places, so many different animals. So, but you weren't on the ground for any of them.
No, we didn't take a single international flight. I did a lot of video calls from my phone. 2:00 in the morning from my kitchen to the crew filming humpbacks in Alaska to find out what the latest was there, and then switching to a call to South Africa or one to India as the 24-hour cycle went round. So we had great crews on the ground, and they were feeding back all the time. Really close relationships with scientists around the world as well, and I was sort of trying to keep on top of that, and we were monitoring the stories as they came in, and then we started editing in October to sort of, as it became clear what the story was. I mean, that was the other unknown with this. When we started out filming at the beginning, we had a hunch that interesting things were going to happen, but we didn't know what. So it was really a sort of a journey of faith in a way, and responding and reacting as new stories came in about how wildlife was responding to lockdown.
Mm-hmm. So what were you expecting? Obviously, like, animals are very adaptable and they can adapt quickly too, but I'm assuming like you would know, like, oh, like birds are singing more and stuff, and like, you know, the sea turtles are laying more eggs. So I guess, like, you know, talking to the experts in conservation is like, like what expectations did you have of like what these creatures were going to do, and how did they exceed them once you got the footage?
Yeah, well, I think we had a hunch that, you know, wildlife is adaptable and it would respond in some way. I think none of us knew, obviously, how long the lockdown period was going to go on for. So how sort of deeply established any of those responses would become, or how much time wildlife would have. I think we were constantly surprised, to be honest, as time went on. I think, you know, some of the first story that we mentioned in the film with birdsong, that is maybe one of the more obvious ones, and one of the sort of common responses that people around the world noticed as the world fell silent. Wow, there's birdsong out there, you know. Yeah. But the fact that the birds were actually adapting their song in response. So the white-crowned sparrows near the Golden Gate Bridge that we follow actually changed their song in response to the lack of road noise, so that they sing with new notes. They have a deeper, kind of sexier voice as a response. And you know, once the scientists worked that out from previous recordings they had going back decades of this population of sparrows, you know, they were amazed too. So it's not just lay people that were being surprised, or filmmakers like myself. I think genuinely scientists were being surprised all the time about what they were discovering. And I think the overall, you know, the biggest discovery in a way is just how interconnected we are, the human world is, with the natural world, with wildlife, how complex and interrelated we all are. And that, you know, every little change that happens in the human world does have a knock-on effect. And, you know, we have a choice about whether they're positive knock-on effects on wildlife and the natural world, or if they're negative. And you know, I think this year it's been a really difficult year for so many people, and you know, not one that anyone would wish. But if there is a positive to come out of it, maybe one thing is that, yeah, it highlights quite how interconnected we are, and that we can have an influence on wildlife and the success of wildlife, and, you know, a really important influence. And in terms of speed, I think, again, we were all pretty flabbergasted about how quickly wildlife responded. I think many people thought there would be a response, but so much happened within a period of days, weeks, months, which perhaps we would have thought would have taken years. So yeah, lots of surprises.
Mm-hmm. David Attenborough narrates the film. He's the go-to voice of nature doc. So how do you get him on board?
He just really loved, you know, the idea, and saw how important this moment could be. You know, he is obviously incredibly passionate about the natural world, and wants to make sure that you know, messages about protecting it and conserving it for future generations, and making the right choices about how we live our lives. You know, he wants to make sure all of that is effectively communicated, and he could see very quickly how important this moment could be, this kind of accidental global experiment that was going on. Not one that an experiment anyone designed or would have wished, but, you know, if this is happening to the world, surely we should, you know, take stock of the lessons there, and use it to the advantage of, you know, the future wildlife. So he entirely appreciated that, and at the same time, he was being written to a lot. He told us, by people finding great comfort in nature during the lockdown period, turning to nature themselves. So I think it was very clear to him that there is this moment through the pandemic, through lockdown, which has shown the importance of nature, of wildlife, to so many around the world, and you know, this film can help highlight that. And obviously, him being on the team and bringing his voice to it, and is hugely powerful. And he did, as ever, he did a great job.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he has like the perfect soothing voice that it relaxes you, but he can also convey like the danger that's afoot as well. It's like a warning.
Yeah.
Well, the film.
recording with him, I could just share an anecdote. Recording with him during COVID is an interesting thing as well. I mean, he was having to be at home and obviously be careful about his own health. So we sent a sound engineer to sit in the garden to do the voiceover recording, and he lined a room of his house with old duvets and pillows to absorb the sound, and we posted the cables through the window and did the recording that way. So, you know, everything had to be done a bit differently on this production, but the results work, so that's great.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like one thing I like when I was done watching, I was like, you know, this just shows like how terribly us humans treat our surroundings. At the end of the film, you know, like the experts are talking about like, you know, now that as we're, you know, hopefully returning to normalcy, like all the small adjustments humans can make so we and wildlife can coexist. So are you hopeful that can happen?
It's a good question. I mean, I think it has shown us that, you know, there are ways in which we can coexist, and actually some of those ways involve quite simple and relatively easy changes in terms of our behavior. You know, relatively small changes can actually have a dramatic impact on the lives and the future of individual species. So yeah, whether that's for a few days and nights during the nesting season of turtles in Florida, you know, asking people to keep off the beaches during nighttime so that they're not disturbed during the nesting period, or changing the way and speed that ships travel around certain key bits of the coastline. You know, there are things that can be done, and I think, you know, it's helped pinpoint what some of those things are, but hopefully there's a broader message as well that, you know, we do have a real influence, and that it has an impact every day, the choices that we make in our own lives and the way that we organize ourselves and go about our lives. So yeah, let's hope that people do, you know, take away from this year when so many of us have had to recalibrate certain things in our lives. Hopefully one of those things that we can recalibrate is the way that we treat the natural world, the way we think about the natural world. And you know, my hope is that maybe we don't sort of see it as them and us so much anymore, that it's not us as humans and then nature out there, and a bit more like, hey, we're all in this together. You know, if this global experiment has shown anything, it's that, you know, it's one world, every action has a reaction, and that if we can think of it in that more complete way of us and the natural world all being part of that one system, then that's got to be a good thing.
Mm-hmm. Well, Tom, it was great speaking with you. Thanks so much for your time, and we'll see you back in a little bit.
Great, thanks a lot.